Pamela Courson returned to Los Angeles a few days after Jim died and proceeded to play out a 3-year Ophelia-like mad scene. Reliable information about Pamela from this period is often unsupported and scarce, since she lived in a demi-mundane life in a shadowy milieu of addiction, grief, and occasional mania. After recovering from her Parisian ordeal, she tried to resume her life in LA as Pamela Morrison. She talked to her dog as if she was talking to Jim. She always spoke of Jim in the present as if he were alive. Racked by crippling spasms of guilt, she would sit for hours by the telephone, waiting for my old man to call. Ray Manzarek ran into her in Sausalito and wanted to ask her what happened in Paris. But when she saw him, she swooned in a paroxysm of grief and could only weep in his arms. She spent much of her time with Paul Rothschild crying. She kept saying over and over, "I just couldn't control him." Pamela had a lot of enemies. Some believed she had killed Jim Morrison for his money. There were people who were content to see her in extreme distress. Others swore or wrote in thinly sourced books that Pamela had confessed to killing Jim accidentally, that he had snorted massive lines of what she told him was cocaine, but which was actually China White. No one put it past her or stood up to say that it couldn't have happened. The Doors litigated Pamela for years. She had no money at all and had to be supported by family and friends. Lawsuits flew like bats at sunset until early 1974, when it looked like there would be finally a settlement. Then the Doors sued the estate again, prolonging the agony. In April, the court recognized Pamela as James Douglas Morrison's lawful heir, and a full settlement was reached with the Doors. Pamela's initial cash disbursement, hurried through to relieve obvious financial distress, was $20,000. Friends say Pamela seemed a little better after things were settled. Others say she was more despondent than ever. She bought a cherry chrome yellow Volkswagen Beetle. She went to Saks Fifth Avenue and bought a monogram ranch mink stole. She phoned her connection and reportedly ordered an ounce of China White. The people she lived with found her dead on the living room couch on the afternoon of April 25, 1974. At first, they thought she was just taking a nap and let her sleep for hours until it began to get weird. Then, they noticed she wasn't breathing. The cops arrived. A man living in the house who said he used to drive for Jim and Pamela was questioned about Pamela's use of heroin. He volunteered that her quote-unquote husband had died of a heroin overdose in Paris 3 years earlier, and that Pamela had recently spoken about looking forward to seeing him again soon. When they took her away, her long red hair cascaded over the side of the gurney as she was being lifted into the ambulance. The coroner could have called Pamela's death a suicide, but called it a massive pulmonary edema instead. The autopsy noted that she had a severe bladder infection. Ray Manzarek was asked to play at a memorial service for both Pamela and Jim, organized by the Coursons at Forest Lawn Cemetery on Monday, April 29th. Ray played When the Music's Over, Love Street, and Crystal Ship. Pamela's apartment was burglarized during the ceremony, and an unknown amount of Jim's effects were reportedly stolen. It is not known whether there was talk of burying Pamela's ashes with Jim in Paris, but they were later interred in a memory wall under the name Pamela Morrison in an Orange County cemetery.